Well, it's late here. I've been working. I don't like to go to bed right after work. Well, I've been uh, I've been wanting to write a book for a while now, and I write enough. That's not the problem. I definitely write enough, but I don't write books. To me, a book is like an encapsulated thing, a perfectum, with a sort of a message. It is as it has to be. I mean, that might be a high goal, but you should at least go for that. At least go for that. You know, let me explain it this way. When let's say you have a hierarchical data in a hierarchical structure, and you need to find record X somewhere in this hierarchical structure. And you start at the very top node, and it has what you would call children, and those children can have children, and so on. That's a hierarchical structure. Now, you can search these two basic ways, and of course, there's combinations, hybrids, all kinds of techniques, and indexing, and this kind of thing. But this is basically two ways. You can go through depth first or breadth first. Now, if you go through breadth first, then you start at that top child, and you say, is this record X? No? Well, then check its children. Are any of its children record X? If not, check all the grandchildren, the children of the children. And that's breadth first, and it slowly gets deeper and deeper. And the depth first is you would check yourself and say, I like depth first because it's easy to make a recursive algorithm for it. You check it yourself. Oh, I'm not record X? Well, what about child 1? Are you record X? And child 1 says, well, I'm not record X. I'll check my child 1. And its child, if it doesn't have a child, will say, I'm not record X, and I have no children, so I'm returning. And then it'll check child 2, and it'll go all the way down to the bottom before it returns up and its sibling is checked. So all the descendants will be checked in that one line before an uncle or whatever you want to call it. That's depth first. Now the way you optimize something like this is you don't want to really look at every single node. The point of putting in a hierarchy is you can organize the hierarchy. And then you end up with the combination of the two, depth and breadth. So for the example, if I'm the parent, the ultimate parent there, I'm not record X, and I can ask child 1, are you record X? And it could say, well, I'm not record X, but also I know that all my children are only records A through L, so there is no record X in this part of the tree, and return right away. Then ask record 2. Record 2 could say, well, I'm not record X either, but I could have a child that's record X, because my children are all the records L through Z, or M through Z, or whatever. And so you don't have to do the depth search, because you have your data structure sorted. Now, in my case, when I'm writing, it's a thinking process. I'm thinking. I'm just using it to think. And so if I get to something that I want to go into depth, I go into depth. I stop the book. And yet I think the issue with writing a book is you have to stay at a certain scale of breadth. You have to cover that breadth. Now, I would like to write a book. I've decided many different ones. And every time I do it, it seems like, well, no, there's something else, something fundamental. What do I want to do as my first book? And, it could be that I just chose a subject, but, I think I need a book that introduces my philosophy. It's like I meet you at your vehicle, and I walk you up my front path to my philosophical home and give you a quick tour of it. We go out on the deck and look out at the philosophical landscape below. Now, the issue here is to synopsize. So I thought, well, how could I do that? I want a succinct way to summarizing my philosophy. So I thought, well, I'll make videos. Videos have to be 10 minutes. This one only has about 5 minutes left. And I'll summarize it. And I'll do multiple takes. And it'll be the same message, or maybe it'll evolve, or I'll hopefully hone in on the same message. And if it's boring, that's kind of my apologies in advance. because this is just sort of an exercise for me, not in the book style, but in doing it as a thinking process style. I think the way I need to introduce my philosophy is, first of all, I need to say what I mean by philosophy. There's a lot of connotations of philosophy, and the two that I would refer to generally will be, one, philosophy is a verb, to philosophize, which is to think about thinking, and philosophy, the noun, a philosophy, which is a worldview, a way of thinking. Now you notice both of those are about life. They're not about truth functions necessarily. I mean, that could be a part of it, just like almost anything can be a part of life. But in terms of what philosophy is, it's about thinking. And, that includes the wrong ways of thinking and everything. It's thinking about thinking. So, those are the two meanings of philosophy. And the result is that philosophy is always about life. So, the first question, the first, in a sense, a primary question, philosophy, is life worth living? That's the way I could formulate it, or I could formulate it some other ways, but I'll choose that way for now. Is life worth living? Now, anybody that is living is showing through their implicit philosophy that they are acting and thinking that it's worth living. Now, being skeptics, we might question our conclusions and wonder and be skeptical if we were right about life being worth living. But when we actually say that we think life is not worth living, and we live as hypocrites, living anyway, that's a different thing. We have to judge the sincerity of that. And basically, the philosophies I will consider are those that figure out some way to embrace life. My basic foundation is relativism and skepticism, so obviously I would mention that. Skepticism is the idea that there's always more questions, there's always a good reason to reflect more and think more about something. And relativism is the idea that we can relate and compare and contrast and otherwise relate things, and that they have relationships that we can discern and describe. So we describe these relationships, and this is how we get all knowledge. We don't have absolute knowledge. We can't say something is blue or not. We can say it's bluer than something else, or we can compare one thing and another. And even in the sense that you might say, well, no, there is this absolute quality of blue. I'm going to call it this shade and this brightness, and that's blue. Well, even that is just evidence of a relationship, right? Because when we see blue, it's just evidence of a relationship between us, the thing we're looking at, and the light that's involved. So I don't know which other things I should go into. Perhaps my belief in progress. I would like to have a way to describe both all the books I've thought of that I would like to write, and the books I might write if I were fortunate enough to discover something interesting. I would like to write the books of things that I don't know, as well as those that I think I do. Some of the books I would like to write at this point before I die are Volume 1 and 2 on relativistic skepticism, whereas Volume 1 will be the system, and Volume 2 will be sort of handling the debate about contrary ideas and my rebuttals and whatnot, with an appendix or some sort of third extra volume that is the definitions that I use, which I would call Language 7.0, because that's what I've always called my project, to make coherent, clean definitions for speaking about skepticism and relativism. Anyway, that's what I was thinking, late at night, and I have 10 seconds to spare, but I'm not even going to use them. So yeah, or maybe I am. I don't know. Well, pretty much. Yeah, I guess I am. It depends if that's good.